The spring of 1979 proved to be the most active period of documented UFO sightings in the history of the Bridgewater Triangle region.
This is a story of a couple Bigfoot that tossed the two of our miners up on Hoyt Peak back 20 years ago.
Nestled in the woods in the middle of Denton County lies Old Alton Bridge. Built in 1884, it's better known as Goatman's Bridge.
We've heard of the ghosts that haunt the shores, the lizard men of the swamps. But one tale has yet to be let off its leash.
You got to see this story tonight. A couple is sharing their experience of living in a Hillsborough house. They say it's haunted.
I could not do this. CBS 17's Bridget Chapman spoke to the Maxwells about their time in the house and dug into the dark history of that property.
He worked for the Times. He was the second one, actually. But his body was found shortly before the Great Depression at the corner of West Washington and Green Street. He had jumped from one of the third floor windows.
Hold on. He says the carpet's been ripped up and the shower is on, but nobody's in there. Man, that's scary. I'm officially freaked out now.
And number 4 now, it is video of the unknown. What is it? Is it real? And what is it doing there? A family in Highland, Michigan believes their house is actually haunted and thinks something is harming their little girl. Connection News reporter Alan Campbell went to the home to see for himself.
It happened here in this room as 15-month-old Lily was inside her bed. Caught on camera, something walks in front of her crib, catching Lily's attention. Whatever it is, the family says it needs to go.
It's almost like she sees something that we don't.
It's an image Heather and Josh say is haunting their home.
It was chilling. It was literally a chill down your spine, like that what-if factor. Like, is this what I just saw?
Caught on the couple's dating cam video a few weeks ago, what appears to be something moving in front of the baby crib.
I freaked out. I stopped what I was doing and I ran upstairs and I grabbed my daughter.
Heather says this so-called ghost scratched her daughter Lily and attacked her too.
It scares us that it could do something else. I mean, there was even a morning that I woke up and it felt like something was around like someone's hands were around my neck.
A team of paranormal investigators came in and tried answering some of the couple's questions and concerns. Josh's father, Jim, says it may be someone who lived in this house before.
The story that I was told was the gentleman that lived here originally committed suicide, apparently, by jumping out this window. Which is, of course, one full story down.
The couple says they don't know why this so-called ghost is targeting them, and say they don't want any part of it.
It's not physically just going after her. It feels like it's going after myself, too.
I couldn't get an explanation out of it. So it's freaky. Is what it is.
Shattered windshields, hoof prints, and neighing. Welcome to Donkey Lady Bridge, a ghost story that goes back decades.
The lady was badly burnt in a fire, and she was distorted, and her hands became almost to look like hoofs, and they were heavily scarred, and her face was elongated, and she sort of looked like a horse.
Throughout the years, many visitors here have told the story of seeing this woman or seeing this beast, but like the supposed encounters, there's more than one story about how this haunting began.
UFO sightings in the history of the Bridgewater Triangle region. A number of news outlets and law enforcement agencies were flooded with reports of large, low-flying UFOs. During that time, former WHDH reporters Jerry Lopes and Steve Sprazia claimed to have witnessed what is arguably the most famous UFO.
Hey guys, this is an impromptu episode. I want to share a screen with you, though, a story that just broke on the news tonight, because this one actually is very disturbing, and it reminds me of something that was reported in Dave McGrath's book. So let me see if I got this on here, and I'll play it for you. All right.
A retired pediatrician is being accused of sexually assaulting former patients. This is Richard Koff, a former doctor at the South Shore Medical Center in Norwell. Today, Koff is being arraigned on sexual assault charges.
Our Manash Kwangwara live for us outside Hingham District Court with more on the case. Manash, what's the latest here?
Well, I can tell you that Koff was put in handcuffs immediately after his court appearance, despite pleading not guilty to the charges against him, charges that date back to 2 decades ago when he was working at the South Shore Medical Center. But now he is expected to post bail on those charges. Now, today in court, he was sitting next to his wife, and the two heard prosecutors lay out the number of charges against him, specifically about how the ball got rolling on this investigation. It was an anonymous Facebook post in a private group titled, inappropriate medical exams. The two women didn't know each other, but saw the post and began talking about the uncomfortable and painful touching they each experienced during annual physical exams, realizing not only were their experiences similar, but that they had the exact same childhood doctor. It was those facts that led the judge to rule that Koff need to pay $50,000 cash bail. He's also being where this alleged abuse occurred. He's also being ordered to not have unsupervised contact with any child under the age of 16, including family members. He also has to surrender his passport and relinquish medical license, which he had despite retiring last year, it had been active as of last month. Now, since this case was brought forward, 22 additional alleged victims have come forward also saying that they too were abused by Koff. Now, it should be noted, he spent nearly 40 years as a licensed pediatrician, and there has not been one complaint lodged against him with the state. Of course, this is an ongoing story, and once we have more information, we'll be sure to keep you guys updated. But for right now, we're live here at Hingham. Manoj Kungwari, NBC 10 Boston.
So obviously a very disturbing story, and this is something that we covered a lot over the summer. This is I can't remember the name of the doctor, but Dave McGrath in his book covers extensively a doctor who was the chief of endocrinology at a hospital in Hartford and did a lot of studies and work with children, and it turned out that he was abusing kids for decades. He was connected to a Catholic priest who was busted for distributing child pornography in New York City, and that guy escaped prosecution and ended up at the hospital. And when eventually, after his death, this doctor's death, they found a huge stash of child porn, much of which this guy made, but much of which he didn't make, so he had been trading it. They found that both in his home in Hartford, and he had a vacation home in New York State. So, I mean, this stuff really, it still goes on, and a lot of these guys worm their way into positions of trust, not just the Catholic Church, but Boy Scouts and teachers, and obviously pediatricians too. So it's very disturbing, just something to keep in mind. So anyways, enough for that bad news. And I wanted to do a quick impromptu because I believe there's a Board of Selectmen meeting, not even a board, some other type of meeting in Canton that's going on tonight. I'm not watching it. I could care less about watching any kind of a town hall meeting. Oh my God, I would rather watch bowling. I mean, I don't know, is that still on TV? I mean, I'd rather watch anything than that, but I know a lot of people are going to be watching it. I have no idea who's carrying it. I'm sure somebody's carrying it. But so there's been, stuff popping up in the news every day. So I wanted to at least this may be the last chance for me to talk to you guys before Thanksgiving. So, happy Thanksgiving, first of all. I hope you enjoy it with your family. We have a lot of battles here and on Twitter and stuff like that. But, most people on either side of this case, we're talking about the Karen Reed case, of course. Most people are decent people. Most of us are not criminals. And, we should all wish each other a happy holidays and success in life. And so I hope you get to enjoy some time with your families. Now, there's a lot of interesting things one of the things I want to go into too is I am going to be looking at questions shortly, but I also, in response to my last episode, I get a lot of questions sent via email or my Facebook. And I do try to address all the questions as long as they're reasonable. There's a lot of people I converse with on a regular basis, in this case, who are on the other side. I mean, reasonable people should be able to discuss the evidence civilly, and that's all I want to do. In terms of both sides, I mean, I followed this case very closely since Turtle Boy broke it in April, and I wasn't able to get documents until I think it was August or September when I had what you guys describe as a meltdown on here, when I was kind of going at it with Aiden. But as a result of that, some people I had never spoke with before reached out to me, most importantly, Kate Peter. And Kate Peter is now my primary source for documents and things like that. And I really appreciate it. Nobody tells me what to think on anything. If you haven't figured that out, you haven't been paying attention. I mean, I make up my own mind on things, and there are things that I agree with Kate on, and there are things that I don't agree with her on. I like talking to her. I've only talked to her, I think, by voice maybe a few times. But I like talking to intelligent people, and she's a very intelligent person. So, and she's a likable person. So I don't know anything about the wars between her and Aiden going back years. I wasn't a part of it. I don't care about it. Like, I could care less about it. So people have their own opinion on her, but that opinion all of it from one person and one channel. So you have to kind of take that with a grain of salt. And so they have their own little war going on, and that's up to them. But I appreciate talking to Kate. I've also talked more recently a few times to Chris Albert. Enjoyed talking to him too, but he doesn't really have all that much information on the case. It's not that, he wasn't in the house. He does obviously know his son very well. And Chris seems like a good guy. I've never met him in person. I don't really know. And I can say that I'm not sure if I should say his last name, but one of our regulars and a guy that communicates me is a very nice guy from Massachusetts named Pat. And Pat was someone that initially, like a lot of people, were communicating with me from the other side, from the guilty camp. And we just kept going back and forth over the evidence, and he's jumped the fence. And Pat's a really nice guy. And so he was in Canton the other day for a hockey thing with his son. And he said, what the heck, I'm going to stop into D&E Pizza. So he went into D&E Pizza, and he didn't mention anything about the case or about this channel or anything. But he said that Chris came over and was an absolute gentleman who was generous with his time with him. And he was an outsider, wasn't from Canton. Had never been in D&E Pizza, didn't know Chris, but Chris treated him very, very well. And this is what you hear from pretty much everybody that lives in Canton, is that he treats people well. And I'm assuming that that's why he was elected to the Board of Selectmen. So, I mean, but that, that doesn't have anything to do with this case, but these are real people. They're human beings. And, they don't have, for the most part, a checkered history or anything like that. They're people that have developed their lives and developed friendships and relationships. And so you really have to be careful about attacking people unless you're really sure, and none of these people are charged with crimes. So we'll get shortly to the wiretaps thing. Another thing I want to mention, if I can find my phone. So I got a message from old friend Sean. Sean is someone that, even though I disagree with on this case, I really like. I've only known him since this summer, so it's not like we're long friends, but sometimes we talked enough on the phone that you feel like you're friends with someone. So there was something I wanted to say that he said to me. I'm going to find this quote here. I wanted to get it exactly. Sorry, I'm taking a moment to look it up. Now, anyways, I couldn't find it. But what he said was, your problem, meaning me, is that I didn't choose a side of the fence from the start, or I switched sides. And I said, well, your problem is that you did choose. And that's how I kind of look at it, because, I think people get into problems on this case or on other cases when you pick a side without having access to much of the information and documents. And then you're kind of pigeonholed into that side and you have no way of getting out of it. And especially if you make yourself kind of a prominent player in that camp, how do you get out of it if the evidence turns? So my position was this summer, well, starting in April with Aiden's first journalism on it, I looked at all the evidence. Now, Aiden had a very thorough first report because this is not a shot, but it was given to him by the defense. And it was a complete theory for how that he may have got killed, that he got killed inside the house. That was a theory. Now, I'm not saying he didn't question them on that theory. He did. The evidence is that he actually absolutely questioned that very hard for a couple of days. But it was a very thorough theory that we got handed on day one. It had suspects, it had people that they pointed the finger at, it had various evidential things that they looked at and said, this is why there's a conspiracy. So it was easy to be swayed by that on the first day. However, you should have had just a little bit of questioning, because you're not seeing the evidence. You're having one person tell you the evidence, even if you're inclined to trust that one person. And I don't care who it is, whether it's me telling you something or Channel 5 or Aiden. You're getting evidence from one source, especially at the beginning like that. You should have that, and you're not seeing anything directly. You're not seeing any documents. You need to question that, even if it sounds convincing, with anybody, whoever's giving it to you. And you should have been able to sense right away that Aiden was getting that from the defense. Again, there's nothing corrupt about that. You have to get your information somewhere, but you should have been able to sense that he was getting it all from what side. Contrast that, say, with Gretchen Voss's article in Boston Magazine. Now, I understand that the turtle right is like, oh, I get all upset about that article. But look, there's someone that actually really did the groundwork on both sides. She spent a lot of time with Aiden. She spent time with Karen, and she spent time with the Alberts. So you could look at that, and even if you're not going to, even if for some reason you reject some of what she says, you could at least say, all right, here's someone who is making an effort to get both sides. There should have been no question that when you saw the beginning of Turtle Boy's reporting, that wasn't what was going on. And that doesn't mean that he was wrong. It just means you should wait to get information from the other side before really locking into a camp. And so all summer for me, I had questions that were just kind of general questions about the case that made me skeptical. The first skepticism starts with the fact that you're getting spoon-fed something from one side. And you should know that in any situation, and especially when it's a defense team that's trying to create reasonable doubt, you got to question that. Second thing, anytime it's a conspiracy that involves having to keep a lot of people quiet in order for it to hold together and something complicated, you should at least be standing back saying, okay, you're going to really have to prove this to me. This is going to be a difficult thing for you to prove, and you're going to have to prove it. It's not saying it's impossible, but you got to start from that position. And then you also look at some of the details of the case and you say, all right, so what is the conspiracy theory here? What they're saying that they killed John inside the house and then carried him out and dropped him on their own lawn. Now, just automatically seeing that right there, you should go, whoa, okay, why would somebody kill someone in their house and then drop them on their own lawn? I mean, it's just common sense that you should at least have had a lot of reservations about that concept right there. It doesn't mean it didn't happen. Maybe there's some reason it could have or something, right? But when you start out looking at this, you should have been like, this is going to be a pretty tough thing to prove in my mind. But, as I've said before, I could see why people were convinced by certain things, especially when you're given things that we thought were facts. So 227, if I've said many times, if that was a fact that Jen McCabe had made that search, how long did I Nicole to 227, then there's obviously a conspiracy. And at the time, we represented it as though that was indisputable data. But we learned in June it was not indisputable, and it wasn't just something that was the opinion of a state trooper. It was something that was very much in dispute by the prosecution, including by their independent expert. And before people start saying, no, Jessica Hyde is absolutely going to get in court and is going to say that she may not say it's certain, but she's going to say the most probable scenario is that those three searches were all made at 6:23. And if you don't think that Jessica Hyde's going to say that, guys, I mean, seriously, you're just trying to force that square peg into the round hole, because you can read it in her conclusions and you can listen to the way Lally is describing it. And that is absolutely what she's going to say. Then she may not be right. And she may not say, I'm certain of this. She may say, well, it seems to me that's most probable. That's fine. So there could be some level of ambiguity here, something that they're going to have to battle in court. But anybody that is certain that the 227 search happened, I just, it's so illogical to be certain about that it's crazy to me. And to me, you have a divided thing, and it seems like more of the experts are saying that it probably didn't happen. But let's just, even if you call it 50-50 in the middle, then you go to other evidence. Okay. But just read her conclusions. I mean, and anybody that's only going to give you half a report, it's like giving you half the report card. They're intentionally holding back something because they don't want you to know the truth. So that's worth keeping in mind. This is a lot of this. I want to also talk about the word fact. Fact is a word that gets thrown around way too much. It's a fact that Karen backed into John's car. We can all see it. That's fine. But most things that are not agreed on by both sides, it's not reasonable to call it a fact. So it's not a fact. 227 is not a fact. It's disagreed by two sides. And there's a lot of other things that come up in this case. We'll go right to the wiretaps thing, I guess, then. So Sean has been messaging. Listen, like I said, I love Sean, but Sean's been messaging me for weeks that the federal government wiretapped the DA, and that they uncovered this massive conspiracy. He's been sending me this message for weeks, and he tells me all the time, just go to Natalie. Natalie has it. I've asked Natalie 3 times, and she says, no. She goes, the only thing I ever had was Karen said that the feds were investigating this, but that's it. She goes, I don't have anything on that. And Sean was so sure, not only that this was true, but that now that the state police have all of Natalie's communications, that they know, wow, that the feds are on to them, because this is in their mind a conspiracy that involves the DA, the highest levels of the state police. It literally would be arguably the biggest conspiracy of all time in U.S. history anyways. I mean, there are bigger ones in world history, like the plot to blow up the Parliament building like 300 years ago or something. But a conspiracy that involves the DA and prosecutors and state police framing someone for murder and the FBI tapping. I mean, I can't really think of anything comparable. And I do know my history. So maybe I'm forgetting something and you guys can remind me of that. But so Natalie kept insisting nothing. And I believe it, because Natalie is an honest person. I kept challenging Sean to send it to me. Didn't send me anything that even said anything on it. So then finally, I guess Aiden posted something on Twitter in the last couple of days. There was, I guess, a screenshot of his conversation with Natalie. So it was, and what they had was, that's where the wiretap things comes from. So basically, Karen told Natalie to tell Aiden, and this must have been back in April or May, because that's when this was going on, that the FBI had wiretapped the DA. And then all this shit was about to be exposed, and they caught him on this massive conspiracy. Okay, all right, maybe, right? We don't know what we don't know, right? But here's the thing. What bothers me is that Sean says, facts, that's a fact. How the hell is that a fact? First of all, the only thing that's a fact is that Karen told Natalie to tell Aiden that. That's it. That's the only fact here. That happened. But that's it. That doesn't mean there was an actual wiretap. It doesn't mean that the wiretap picked anything up. And the idea that Karen is going to know about a federal wiretap, one of the most secret things that there is. I mean, the federal government is designed. They're trying to. Those operations are designed to resist being discovered by mafioso and stuff like that. So they have all kinds of protocols in place to keep that stuff secret. So it seems incredibly unlikely that Karen Reed or her lawyers or whoever could have found out that the federal government had wiretapped somebody. Thank you, Tom. The gunpowder plot. Coming through, brother. Thank you. I couldn't remember the name. Guy Fawkes. Yes, that was the plot to blow up the Parliament. I think Guy Fawkes was a Catholic. So no offense to Catholics, which, So, anyways, this on the wiretaps, is it impossible? I mean, nothing's impossible, but it seems like if they actually had wiretaps of the DA and they caught him in this massive corruption, they really need to expedite that process, because that would mean they would have to throw out all of the other cases that are being prosecuted by one of the busiest DA offices in the state for Norfolk County. I don't know if it's one of the busiest, but I would say it's in the top 4, right? Top 4 or top 5. I mean, definitely a lot of cases getting prosecuted out of there. And all of that stuff would be thrown out. All those people would get off. It's that big of a scandal. And so they would have to expedite that and get that to the state attorney general to get that under control. So if there was wiretaps and it was picking stuff up like that, I've been told by, all right, first of all, there's a friend of mine, Dave Jenkins, a former federal cop, he's out in Ohio. He firmly believes that there's no conspiracy here, but he did tell me he had a lot of experiences. He did a lot of undercover work. He said federal investigations take their own pace, and they might not be inclined to slow it down for anybody. I also talked to Wayne Miller on the channel Wednesday, who's also a former federal cop. He kind of said the same thing. I've also talked to lawyers and a college roommate that's a judge, and they all kind of said the same thing, but most of them felt that in a case like this, they would expedite, because it's just jeopardizing too much else. So most of them felt that they would in some way expedite this process. So, I don't know. It's worth keeping in mind that it's extremely the feds are investigating something. That's a fact. They did subpoena the witnesses. So it just, when you look behind the scenes at all of the other there don't seem to be any indications. Just want to look up one more quote, but there don't seem to be any indications of some massive conspiracy that's about to be uncovered. There's no signs of it. So I wanted to look up, this was also something, if I can find this, Wendy Murphy, the infamous Wendy Murphy, if I can find her. There's a lot of Wendy Murphys, so I should have saved this. But, she said something. Let me see if I can find, let me give it one more second, because it's worth, maybe it's Wendy Murphy law. It's worth looking at this, because to me, it's a problem. Just even this approach. And it bothers me that a lawyer is saying stuff like this. I guess it shouldn't bother me, but it does. All right, let me try under the latest view. Oh, if anybody can find this, help me out. But it's what Wendy posted maybe this morning. All right, here it is. She says, just debating nonsense about the conspiracy is good for the defense because it validates the crazies. The only thing people should debate is whether Karen will plead guilty to manslaughter or go to jail and be found guilty of murder. I mean, that kind of bothers me. And I posted, what I posted there is basically saying that, what I said is, I don't consider this comment helpful. It's always fair and useful to debate evidence, and to not admit that there are some unexplained and odd things in this case is unreasonable. And that's what I think. I mean, I really think that however you land at the moment on this case, there are a lot of strange things in it, and it's worth discussing them. And I also think it's helpful to the public we all get a better understanding. A lot of us have a much better understanding of things that we had no interest in 6 months ago. I know a lot of people have a lot more interest in the law now and how it works, and things like discovery they probably didn't know about before. One thing that I never knew anything about was data. Not that it's that interesting, but I know a lot more about it now. And I mean, I just think it's useful to the public as long as you do it in a civil way. You shouldn't be attacking people for no reason. That's where that. So there are areas there are ways that you have to draw lines here, and unfortunately in this case we've really seen the dark side and people did not. But I think it's okay to it's healthy to debate the case, and there are questions here. And someone also might say, well, just let the trial system work. Yes and no. I mean, people should be careful about conclusions they draw until you see the trial. But there's a reason people don't trust the system. Sometimes the system is corrupt or makes mistakes. I mentioned today in a post that in the 1990s, up until the 1990s, I was pro death penalty. And I changed my mind because of one documentary I watched on the Discovery Channel that was about the death penalty, narrated by the great Bill Curtis. And there was a case, I'm not sure, maybe in Arizona or it was somewhere out in the West, where there was a massive slaughter of innocents at a Buddhist temple. And so there was a lot of pressure to catch whoever did this. And this was in the period before mass killings became a thing. So maybe it didn't get as much attention as it should have. But there was massive pressure. Well, they brought in these two Hispanic guys who, for whatever reason, became their suspects. And these were just regular guys. They weren't criminals. They weren't part of a cartel or something like that. They were working guys with families. However, they got picked up. And so then they put these guys under hardcore interrogation for, I forget the amount, but it was more than 24 hours straight. They had different teams of police coming in and interrogating these guys. And eventually, these two guys confessed to doing the killings in the temple. And they provided details to the police. So they got convicted and were on death row. But about 2 years after that, I forget, it's been a long time since I've seen this documentary, but about 2 years after that, the real killers came out. Maybe they got picked up, confessing on some of the cases, something like that. And it turned out, so these guys got let out of jail and they were innocent. But it turned out there actually was exculpatory evidence that was there all along, and the police ignored it. For instance, they proved that they were many, many miles away from it was not coerced. You see, and this is the thing. There's not even necessarily any proof that there was deliberate coercion or corruption in the police testimony. What happens is you got these angry cops coming in and taking turns and shifts interrogating them, but every once in a while somebody through their questions would accidentally give these guys details from the crime scene. So eventually, not only did they confess, but they had some of the details from the crime scene, which that was the reason. Because people in every big case, there are false confessions. So that's why police withhold details of the crime scene. So in order to weed those out. But then, so if you got someone that confesses and they start giving you the actual details from the scene, then you say, oh, okay, then this is real. This happened. This really happened. And then you get the conviction. But so these guys had those details, and yet they weren't anywhere near the crime scene. They went many miles. I think they were like 100 miles away. So how do they get those details? They got it from the police, intentionally or not. But what happens is when you're under interrogation like that and you get no sleep and it goes on and on and on, your mind starts to play tricks on you. So when they confessed in those moments, they probably believed that they were the killers, even though they weren't criminals and they hadn't killed anybody. So when I looked at that, I definitely started thinking, you got to be careful about a lot of things. You got to be careful about witness accounts. You got to be careful about police coercion, but you also have to be mistrustful of prosecution. Yeah, it doesn't mean that all prosecutions are corrupt. It just means you got to stand back. And so I think because and there's no shortage of people that are in jails that were falsely corrupted. It happened. We've seen numerous guys get out, including guys from the Winter Hill gang and stuff like that were falsely convicted. Some of them spent 30 years in jail. So it's worth keeping that in mind. That is not an attack on the police or the system. It's just the system is filled with human beings, and human beings have a tendency to be corrupt. And that's just the way it is. That's always going to be a part of it. So I think there's a valuable role for channels like this or the public to discuss these cases. Try to do it reasonably, try to do it fair, try to do it with a sense of conscience, ethically. But there is an important role for it, because the prosecution don't always get it right. The police don't always get it right. And there are little levels of corruption. And you can't trust the regular media, which is now, there's barely anything left. There aren't a lot of newspapers left, and what's left, they don't have a lot of resources, and they also can't be trusted in a lot of times. So I do think there's a role for this third media, the alternative media doing it. But keep in mind, we don't have the evidence. We don't have all of the evidence. We don't have the expertise. This actually brings up another question. So one of the things that I think that meeting starts in 15 minutes. So somebody give me a heads up if it's time to shut the hell up and let you guys go watch it. I don't even know if it's on anywhere. One of the things that people have been messaging me about was Michael Proctor and the investigation. And I think this was Steve, and he messaged me basically saying, now he's on the other side, but he's like, I appreciate your coverage of this and it's all reasonable, but I think you're underemphasizing the degree to which Michael Proctor was compromised. And I think this is something that Jules agrees with too. Oh, Jules, you've changed your name to Jules now. You had some Nunja on there, something most recently. Here is my feeling on this. Feelings, because there's several thoughts on it. So for one thing, I am not a cop. I've never been anywhere near a murder investigation. So I should show a lot of caution. I'm also not a lawyer, and so I've never been on a murder trial. So I should show a lot of caution about trying to describe what is shoddy police work and what isn't shoddy police work. I'm not saying that there wasn't shoddy police work here. I'm just saying I think it's, to be fair, I should exercise a lot of caution because I don't know. I know how to make good drinks. That's it. All right. So it seems reasonable that I should that doesn't mean I shouldn't be willing to question things, but especially before the trial, because Michael Proctor won't get a chance to defend himself until the trial, and he can't speak for himself now. So and we have to understand that all of this evidence that's coming out that is saying that Michael Proctor was corrupted or was compromised or the investigation was shoddy, that's all coming from one side. So now some of the things that come from that side are dishonest. Let's just be fair. So for instance, they made a big deal a couple weeks ago about a photo showing John's clothing near the feet of Michael Proctor in the emergency room. I mean, listen, when John showed up, they took his clothes off in an ER situation to try to save his life, and they would have thrown it on the floor. They're not concerned about evidence. They're concerned about saving his life. And so Michael Proctor gets there. He's standing next to him, getting ready to bag them when a picture shows up. But the defense goes through all of this stuff, all the whatever's in discovery right now. You're talking about God knows how much video and pictures and stuff from everything, because everything's documented, or so much of it is, right? So they're looking for those little things that they can seize on. And that's one you go, aha, Trooper Proctor. I mean, come on, guys. Now, does that mean everything was done well? I'm sure it wasn't. Was it shoddy? Well, maybe at the end of the day, we will conclude it was shoddy. But it's a little bit early to do that now, until we've seen all the evidence, until we've seen the trial, and until we've seen Michael have a chance to defend himself. It's okay to question some of these things, but I just think that people shouldn't rush too quickly to conclusions. That's all I'm saying. As far as him being compromised by connections, I mean, I haven't seen enough there to make me think that or even interested in it. Is it there isn't any evidence that he knew Jen McCabe. And I don't know. I mean, in this day of social media, when there's pictures everywhere all the time, this is all that we can find is a picture with him and some daughters that were at some kind of a public event or something like that, or a birthday party or whatever. I mean, he's in uniform, so he's probably he lives in Canton. And so it's a smallish town. You're going to be at events and things like that. But if there's a close connection, despite all these thousands of turtle riders and their private investigators and the defense team and Karen herself scouring over everything, looking for pictures, they don't have much. They got Colin Albert and I think Chris were at a wedding 10 years ago. I mean, I went to a lot of weddings in my 20s and 30s, and most of those people that sat at my tables, I never saw again. I never saw before. I never saw again. And some of them were, I hate to say it, but some of them were family. And so a lot of the people at those weddings, I don't really know them. I don't even remember. I wouldn't know their names, you know? So I don't see much of a connection here. There could be a little bit more of a connection that we maybe would be comfortable with. Maybe, but I don't see any reason why Michael Proctor would have got to that crime scene if he didn't know Karen and he didn't know John. There probably isn't any reason for him to recuse himself, because one thing he's not thinking is, once he learns pretty quickly, well, okay, so Michael Proctor got, I believe, I'm not sure, that his first stop with Trooper Buchanan was at the hospital, and there they would have learned that there were no signs that John had been in a fight. So pretty quickly, they were on to the pretty certain that this was a hit and run. So that's the direction of their investigation. Now, you can say maybe they should have went in the house and stuff like that. That's all fine. But the Canton police had already spoken to the people in the house, and none of them saw John. So I just don't think Michael Proctor was looking at this like you're looking at it now, saying you've got to do these things because somebody might think there's a conspiracy. I don't see it. And by the time they found those taillight pieces in the snow, which was at 5:45, well, there was no question that anybody was inside the house, at least from Michael's point of view, because the evidence for the hit and run was right there in the snow. And if you're Michael Proctor and you know you didn't plant the evidence, then you have no reason to suspect anything inside the house. So certainly by 5, now I don't think he got to the hospital until early in the afternoon, and the car was towed. The taillight was broken, and so by 5:45, he knew that this had nothing to do with anything that had happened inside the house. He knew that for sure. So he had no reason to be suspecting that a couple years down the road, people were going to be saying there's a conspiracy, Trooper Proctor. Nobody thought that. Nobody. I mean, Michael Proctor would not have thought that. So he had no reason. You could say maybe he should have, but I mean, he had no reason to think people were going to suspect that he was planting evidence. There's not a lot of precedent for it. Has anything in his training exposed him to the idea that the defense is going to accuse the state police of framing someone in a murder? I don't think it would have entered his mind. So that to me is why I don't focus on that. I tend to focus on the actual hard evidence, or even just whether there was at least an opportunity to plant taillight pieces, and I don't think there was. So another thing we should talk about, we're running up on time. Somebody let me know if there's going to be a meeting. But so the texts between Karen and Higgins, I think this is going to be key. Maybe it's not. I don't know, but they're entered in discovery. I think there was over 50 pages of text between Karen and Higgins. This is the ATF agent Higgins. And okay. Sean, hi, Sean, by the way, it's good to see you. Kevin, I said I never wavered. All right, so I couldn't find the quote. I never wavered. Where have you been flip-flopping? Yeah, flip-flopping. That's what you do when you follow evidence. You don't waver when you form a decision too quickly and then lock yourself into that camp. So yeah, you don't waver, but you're not really examining evidence anymore. Right, Sean? I mean, you've locked yourself into that side, and now everything that comes through, you start interpreting in that light. And I've seen this now for months, Sean. And this is, I mean, I love you, brother, but this is the problem with your thinking. I mean, I'll give you a perfect example. When we looked at the driveway video of Karen backing into the SUV, you realized that the report was there was absolutely no damage, not a scratch to John's SUV. Now, I personally didn't have a problem with that. I think it's possible to crack your taillight and not damage the car. I think that's possible. But you found that to be a problem, and you mentioned about physics and stuff like that. Okay. So because of that, You decided that they must have taken John's SUV from the driveway the next day and whisked it off to an auto body shop to fix it up to make sure there was no visible signs of damage on it. And I said, well, but John's family was all gathering in the house. So wouldn't they notice it missing? And that's when you suggested the idea that maybe a family member, I'm not going to say who, but, was behind it. And it's just, to me, this is what happens when you lock yourself into a position instead of objectively sitting perched on the fence, looking at evidence. If you lock yourself into a position, what's going to happen is you're going to end up thinking absurd things. And that's what that is, an absurd thing. I love you. It's an absurd thing. It's the idea that they stole John's car from the driveway is absurd. And I don't know if you still believe it, but you chased it down for months and you get forced into these positions because you locked yourself onto one side. That's what led to those problems. Because I know you're a smart guy, and it's only because you were locked into that position, and maybe because you kind of were enjoying being a leader in the movement, running the website, being connected to Karen's lawyers, being connected to Karen. All those things compromised your ability to think objectively like you normally would back when you were in law enforcement. And I think so. You want to be on the fence, dude. That's the only place to be until you have enough evidence to make a clear decision. So that's my approach. I may not be right in this case, but I do think that that's what you want to do. All right. See, this is, again, Hizzy says, Kevin, you haven't examined evidence. Please stop talking down to people like you know everything. There's nothing I can really say to people like that. Okay, Hizzy, there's nothing I can say. I'm telling you, I'm just a bartender. I'm not talking down to you. I'm telling you, I've looked at all the evidence. There's no piece of evidence that I haven't discussed in this case. Okay. I've discussed it all. Now, that doesn't mean I'm right. My analysis can be wrong. You have the right to look and say my analysis is fucked up. But to say that I haven't looked at any evidence, no, that's crazy. This is what happens when too many people on the free Karen Read side do this. They think because I'm not focused on the same piece of evidence that they find to be so important, that I'm not looking at evidence. Even though over the summer, I've discussed everything and I reported it, and everything new that comes out, I will put out there, whatever side it's on. You know this. But people get upset when I don't take their side, and then they make accusations like that. I would never talk down to you for your theory, but I'm talking down to you for saying that because that's unreasonable and that's a sign of a closed mind, and it bothers me. So anyways, didn't mean to get upset. See, now she's calling Jules an idiot. So, this is the problem. Hey, all right, you guys have a right to be there and have your little feuds. But if you want to think clearly on this, don't lock yourself into a position before we have enough evidence to look at it. And it took a long time to get that evidence. And all the evidence that we got this summer was from one side. And that was all that most of the people that are very fervent about this case made up their mind by looking at evidence that was presented just from the defense. And that's a mistake. If you go to trial and you only get the prosecution or you only get the defense, the jury is always going to go with that. That's why in a trial you get both sides. And here you're only getting one side. And so anyways, now Kay Hizzy said you're an idiot, Jules, but I can say that Jules is absolutely not an idiot. And Jules is someone who is on the other, she was on the innocent side a lot longer than I was. And when I flipped, as Sean said, she was mad at me and firing a lot of shots at me, but she kept asking questions, and she came around on her own. And so we've become pretty good friends since then. And she's a very intelligent person, and we have, good conversations. So, anyways, no, hell, he does not. I love Sean, and I feel bad saying anything. I just don't know what to say. Is that this stuff frustrates me. That it's ideas that frustrate me. The idea that I should have picked a side on this early on and stuck with it, no matter what the evidence was. That alarms me, frankly. That's such a bad idea that alarms me. And I think that's the problem that we see in this case. Anyways, it's almost 7:00, so I'm going to let you guys go in a couple minutes. Just looking. Jules said I was an asshole to Kevin, but I was okay with it because she was asking questions. And that's, to me, if you're asking intelligent questions, not stupid questions, she was asking very intelligent questions. And so that's no, Hizzy, I was not talking down to Sean. I'm talking down to the approach that you should just get on. How else can I say it? How else can I say that? Sean, why would you even say that? Kevin said, Sean, make sure you do not delete this video. I have never deleted a video, ever. I have never deleted any of these videos. Okay. I mean, that's what is all right. I think what Sean is thinking here is that when the FBI swoops in and arrests everybody in all the DAs in the state and the governor and everybody, and the feds save the day, then Kevin will want to delete this video. No, I will leave everything up. I've said I have no. If something like that happens, it will be a glorious day for me too, because then I can say I retire from true crime, and we'll just do some fiction on this channel or something like that. That's fine. I don't care. I don't have a fish in this game. I mean, it's no, I would not delete that. I will do a mea culpa video if and when the feds come in there and it turns out they did actually wiretap the DA Morrissey and held on to that, even though they knew he was corrupt, and let it, and all of a sudden hundreds of other cases have to be dismissed because of it. Yeah, I will come on and do a mea culpa and say, I got it wrong. My analysis was worthless. Please don't follow me anymore. I will do it. I absolutely will do it. And I won't make a quick video. I will stay on and take the abuse until everybody feels good and satisfied and done. Oh, we are at 7:01. So, guys, does anybody know if the council hearing is on? Is anybody broadcasting it? Is anything being played? Eileen asks, who was wiretapped? To my knowledge, nobody. And that would be my opinion. But people on the Free Karen Read are saying that the federal government, the FBI, has wiretapped the DA. So is Young Jerks on right now playing the Canton meeting? Is that what you're saying? Or are they saying something about the wiretapped? All right, Izzy. I mean, you're very emotional. You're very upset. Yes. Of course, listen, this is the way it works. There is evidence that is in discovery that both sides have seen that none of us in the public have seen. And that's just the reality of it. And it's very difficult for the prosecution isn't going to leak stuff. The only way they're able to inject new information into it is through these motions or replies to motions and things like that. But they want to save stuff for the trial. So Young Jerks is playing the Canton meeting. If anybody wants to jump over, I can think of a million things I'd rather do than watch a board meeting. But anyways, if anybody wants to go check it out, it's on that crazy dude, Young Jerks. Another one of those grifters that just has absolutely zero interest in the truth. Zero. Doesn't even pretend to. Anybody that's out there going, McAlberts is not a serious person, is crazy. All right. It's just not interested in the truth. It's just a grifter trying to get views. No, Sean, I never said anybody was done. Okay. I said, but no, when did I say? Oh, no, I'm sorry. I take it back. You were talking about the feds. Okay. I did hear no true bill. But again, I don't know. These things are absolutely top secret, so you get leaks. I was told no true bill. But I don't know. So, I mean, and they generally don't report when it's no true bill. So we don't know. I am told that the families have asked the federal government to issue a statement about no true bill if that has already happened, or if it hasn't happened yet, if it does happen. And I think there's a reason why these things are kept secret, and that's because if the FBI says they're investigating you, but they don't find enough to indict you, and the federal grand jury doesn't find enough to indict you, then what happens is you're smeared with that for the rest of your life. So that's just, so they in order to avoid that, they intentionally don't tell you anything, that they even existed, let alone any decision they arrived. But there are exceptions, and I would think that this is one of those times when there should be an exception because it's widely reported now. There's no question that there was a federal grand jury, and the way we knew that for certain was when Karen's private investigators discovered that Colin had been served a subpoena to testify. So then there was no way to avoid it. And I have talked about it with the family, and there's no question that it exists. They believe it's done, and some of the people that had been scheduled to testify were canceled, but they're not allowed to talk about someone that actually testified is not in front of a grand jury is not allowed to discuss that. So I don't know. So we'll see. I think I haven't flip-flopped, Sean. There's a difference between flip-flopping and reporting the latest evidence. That's just called honesty. So if you report something that you think is on, listen, a perfect example was on this channel this summer. First of all, we did report that there was a feud between Colin and John O'Keefe. We now know that was made up by Karen. That seems to be the predominant evidence. So I'm not flip-flopping. I'm just telling you that was wrong. There was no feud. And if some new evidence comes out to show me there was, I'll report that. You report the evidence as best you can. I don't mean you report every rumor, but you do the best you can with the evidence. And that's not flip-flopping. That's just trying to be fair and honest with your audience. And I will always do that. Just see if there's anything else here in my notes. I do think that there's incentive for both sides now to make a plea deal, because that's speculation that is based on what we can't know, and that's stuff that's in the discovery. So we need to know. At this point, based on what we do know, I would say there's reasonable doubt. And if I was Karen, I'd take it to trial. But we know there's a lot of stuff that we don't know about. There are multiple videos, such as Cassie's Corner Convenience, the Jewish Temple, the farmhouse, the library. There are things that are listed that we can't see them, but they can see them. Both sides can see them. We know there's the electronic vehicle data, which shows that Karen's SUV was in a collision going in reverse at high speed. It seems kind of unlikely that was something else. Whatever happened in the driveway was not high speed. So, and the evidence actually showed that after the collision, the car continued for a certain amount of feet, and in total, it went like 62 feet. So, we don't know all the other evidence that's there. It's just, what is going to be shown on Karen's phone data. I don't know. For some reason, that Higgins, all those messages with Higgins were entered in. Now, I don't know. I mean, I guess they could have found older messages from days before, and they're using that as a way of showing that there was animosity between Karen and John. I think if that's what it is, I think that's kind of unfair. I mean, just because boyfriends and girlfriends fight doesn't mean you're going to try to back into them. I don't think too many people believe Karen backed into John on purpose. It just seems crazy. Karen has never committed a crime that I know of, and isn't that kind of person. She's a professional person who teaches college level courses, a finance expert, stuff like that. She's not the kind of person that does that kind of thing. It would be very strange. Nothing's impossible in life, especially if you've been drinking and you're angry. But if it happened, it was more likely an accident. It could have been a reckless accident, like why we're, hitting the gas that hard where you go for 62 feet. That's reckless. You could have hit, who knows how many people could have hit. You could have backed into Nagel, or if he was still there. I personally think Nagel was gone by then, but that truck. But someone else could have been pulling up around that corner. I mean, it was a reckless, dangerous thing to do if that's what happened. And that is what the vehicle data suggests happened. So I think if there's enough evidence there where she's definitely going to be convicted of at least manslaughter, it makes sense for her to make a deal. And it makes sense for the prosecution because, as we saw with the Lorianne Phillips case this week, sometimes, in that case, even though it was neither side disputed that she ran over her husband and left him to die in the cold, what the defense said was that she didn't know she did it. And they were able, and now that was a different situation because she was in an abusive relationship and she seemed to have driven away at a high speed because she was afraid of her husband who was trying to maybe pull her out of the car or something. So it was enough to convince the jury that she was in it. She was acquitted. So if I was the prosecution, I would look at that and say, okay, let's not take a chance with this jury. Let's make a deal. And so to me, there's incentive to make a deal here as long as it involves people admitting the truth. So Karen would have to come out and say, okay, I accept that this is what happened. And then everybody can just kind of put it behind them. And I mean, in an ideal world, I would like to see that happen and minimal jail time. I mean, I wouldn't even be offended if it was probation or something like that. You know, who wants to see people destroyed? Because even if Karen was copped a plea and was given 6 months probation, her life is still largely ruined from this case. You don't recover from this. So I mean, especially where unless there was intention involved. I mean, the charges were up to second degree. That means malicious intention. But is that proven? If it's just based on angry voice messages or text messages, no. If that's all it's based on, no. Come on, get this back down. Make this thing make sense. Get it back down to normal, and let's everybody kind of move on with our lives. Let's see, anything else? That's all I got. So if everybody's wants to go and watch that, listen, everybody, have a good Thanksgiving. Sean, please have a good Thanksgiving. I hope you do well. I know you love your dad, and your dad's down there in Florida, and he must be near 90 or something like that, right? My parents are older, and I hope everybody has a really good Thanksgiving. Tom Fleming, thank you. I hope you have a good Thanksgiving with his wife, Allison. And Judy, thank you. You're still here. Judy, Jules, I hope you guys have a great Thanksgiving. Slatherings. I don't know. I'm going to be slathering a lot of gravy on the turkey, I think. I wonder where you got the name Slatherings. Fiona, have a good Thanksgiving. Anybody's still here? Even Hizzy, please have a good Thanksgiving. All right. I haven't killed anybody. Not lately. Jane, unfortunately, sounds like alcohol played a part. Yeah, I would say so. Karen does seem to be someone that can hold her tea, so she must have been kind of fun to hang out with. Just looking back to make sure I didn't miss the questions. Anybody that was mad at each other, let it go. It's Thanksgiving. The Boston Celtics are on tonight again. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm a big Celtics fans, and I look forward to talking to everybody after Thanksgiving. Just checking last through. My username is Mythic with a capital M. I'm trying to figure out what that means. Melanie, happy Thanksgiving to you too. Melanie was on here getting her tarot card reading done Friday. I hope she was happy with it. RC, happy Thanksgiving. I'm sure he's not here, but happy Thanksgiving to Aiden Kearney too. He's a father. He has 2 kids. No one wants to see anybody go to jail. And obviously, happy Thanksgiving to Dave and Erin. And Hizzy says, nice audience you have. Yeah, well, I hope you're being sincere, but I don't know. I didn't watch all of the battle here, so I'm not really sure exactly. Let's try to have our battles, and then I don't usually get upset, but sometimes a little bit. I apologize. So let's try to remember that none of us is on trial for anything. And thank you, Tom. I appreciate it. Actually, there is something that people could help out with if you want to support the channel. Very simple. Just give us a like. And if you really want to help out, sometime when we're doing something, post a link to it in your social media. Just we're not looking to be huge. We just would like to have a nice, solid community here of intelligent people talking to each other and occasionally arguing like this. I argue with Sean, but he's a great guy, and I would definitely defend him to the hilt for that. And just checking through Chap again. Jules, I learned recently, is a professional psychic. So if you want to, hi Judy, if you want to schedule something with Jules, I'm sure that can be arranged. Reach out to me, reach out to her. There's actually a lot of people that are into this, and Jay on Friday nights has been doing tarot card stuff for us, and he's been doing readings on here. I am not a believer in psychic stuff or tarot cards or anything like that, or really anything supernatural. I keep an open mind to it, but I'm for anything that's fun. All right, just reading through. All right, guys, again, thank you very much. And I hope everybody has a good Thanksgiving, and we'll see you all as soon as we can. Thanks.